Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learning. I'm delighted and honoured today to be joined by Paula Higgins. Paula is the CEO of Homeowners Alliance. I'm going to ask Paula to explain in more detail what that is. But thank you very much for coming on and being a guest, Paula. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Really nice to be here. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you. So tell us a bit more about Homeowners Alliance, what it's all about, and how you got involved in it.
Yes, so Homeowners Alliance, we're a consumer group. We're a property advice website for consumers, and we really try to help buyers, sellers, owners navigate through the property world step by step. So try to give them the top tips of advice that estate agents and others would give them. I set up 12 years ago, and the reason why I did so is previously I was working in the government and housing department, and I felt that there wasn't a voice of the homeowner and those who aspire to own. So we also campaign on behalf of homeowners. We've been campaigning for changes to stamp duty, better protections for new homes, across a whole raft of issues. And we'll be speaking later about a report we've just done on material information.
Fine, brilliant. So thank you for that, and thank you for explaining. I've already got questions about that, but I'm going to come back to that in a bit. So how did you get to become a government minister? How did that path go? And what were the lessons learning in government? Because one of the things as an outsider looking in is the revolving door there is of government ministers in the housing department. And if, we had to put down, guess the names, I think people will find it hard because it changes so much.
Yes. Well, you've just given me a promotion. I was never a government minister.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I was a civil servant, and I worked in lots of different areas, including energy performance certificates, actually. So I did the legislation around that. So you're right that we've had government ministers come and go, and it's incredibly frustrating. But the bank of civil servants underneath, who are apolitical, who are actually sort of carrying out the wishes of the government at the time, are there working away. But I should say that one of the reasons why I left the department is because change happens from outside. So, you almost, if you want change and you want sort of better regulation or estate agents and more, changes to the home buying and selling process, it's got to come from outside, and we've got to really push government for that and changes to stamp duty. And that's why it's really exciting to work within it and working in lots of different areas. But it's also really exciting being outside and really being able to lobby for change and to really give people, I really wanted to help people with practical information we always say that, we know what buyers and sellers might need to know, but they don't want to know it, and they just want to buy and sell homes. So we really try to work with trade associations, lots of different groups, to try to get that information to homeowners and home buyers and sellers, while also campaigning on behalf of them. But I would say civil servants are probably just as frustrated as industry, and on how the revolving door happens with the priorities and things sort of stop and start. But it's a mammoth beast, government, and the way it works, as we can tell.
Okay, definitely. So I've gone through the selling and buying process with my mum, my girlfriend recently, and my son's looking to buy. And I'm a firm believer that the consumer really does not understand anything about the property journey.
Yes.
So I think education is very important. That's why I'm recording this with you today. But I've also recorded stuff with mortgage brokers. I've recorded stuff with surveyors. I've recorded stuff with hopefully removal companies, solicitors, so that the public get a better understanding of what agents do. But if you're an agent watching this, how can they go about and educate the consumer more? I mean, I've heard of the Homeowners Alliance. I'll be honest, I do a lot of training and I share some of the stats that you have.
Great.
And what's really interesting is, and I would say, honestly, a good 90% of people haven't heard of you, which I think is very sad, because looking at all the educational content you provide, it's absolutely fantastic. So if I was an agent, I know where I'll be going to get my educational content, to share loads of videos, to also try, if you're happy, to go and get you to speaking. But what do agents have to do to help the consumer understand more about the process? because it is very stressful.
It is, and I always say that, consumers might not want to be educated because they just want to buy and sell. They don't want to become property professionals. They're not going to be, sort of agonizing over house price watch and growth as we all do. So I think where we try to do is that we probably give the same advice and information as top estate agents on how putting in an offer, getting offer accepted, how it would work. But sometimes we find that because of it's coming from ourselves, we're seen to be as quite independent, that actually, how much should you pay an estate agent, or how do you compare estate agents? That's really, really good information. So I know that we have a great sort of find an estate agent tool, which compares the performance of the estate agents. And the good ones will say, well, actually go look on Homeowners Alliance's tool and see where we are, and we can see what you can compare by price, success rate, and if they're and their reviews. And that's being very open about, as opposed to like a hard sales approach. But it is about sort of in bite-sized pieces through our site. There's also the government has a how to buy, how to sell guides. But it's also really, I think, with the good estate agents, it's not just estate agents have got such an important role because they're the first port of call for the buyers and the sellers. And they've got to make sure that they're very open about it, making sure that they get their conveyancers nice and early, try not to sort of just focus on the revenue and the referral fees if just trying to push into a mortgage, but being is that you want to enable them to buy that property or to sell that property. So, and we know there's great estate agents out there, but unfortunately, some of the great ones get tarred by, some of the bad press of, how we trust estate agents.
We are far too transactional in this country, or estate agents are. And actually, you mentioned something there about client for life. How do agents come away from being that transaction? Oh, you know what? I've done that job. I just move on to the next one. There seems to be no stay in touch policy for agents whatsoever. Clients seem to go into witness protection. They've never heard from them. Again, is there stuff that agents can be doing to improve on that, rather than, you're a number, that's it, goodbye?
And I think that's where if it's driven by commission. But I think the big thing for estate agents is that, there's not very strong regulation of estate agents and training of estate agents. And there's a huge difference between the ones who really know their stuff, who are, property professionals, and they understand it's a very complicated system to buy and sell, and the ones who are just in there to make the quick buck. So I think it's really important to increase that level, to make sure estate agents, they, not to be seen as the slick salesman, but they're there sort of holding through the property journey, and making sure that, you're working on behalf of, it's behalf of the seller. And that's something that estate agents have to really tell, because buyers will go in and they think that the estate agent is working, on their behalf as well, but they're not really. But we also do not want to tar the water and make sure that they're not just sitting there pushing some of the other services, trying to get the mortgage there, trying to get the conveyancing, going for one conveyancer over another because of the referral fees and that sort of thing. So being very upfront, being very honest, very open. One of our first reports back in 2016, at the time, you didn't even know how much to pay an estate agent. They would be very opaque, we couldn't figure out. You had to have them right by the sofa. So being, having honest, open conversations, open communications, contracts, that sort of thing is, so that you're on their side. Talking about touch points is that, you've got to remember local estate agents, those people who are buying, who bought, they were likely to sell. So that sort of keeping in touch is always a good way. And we know that, good local estate agents, they'll be leafleting all the time. They'll be involved with the school fairs, and they really have they'll have list of potential buyers. So that sort of thing. So really sort of selling their services that way. But, do what they do properly, which is the buying and helping people buy and sell homes and move home, which is a huge service. Quite good value here.
Yeah, definitely. And as you rightly say, buyers are your future sellers there.
Mm-hmm.
So, treat everybody. How would you expect your mum to be treated, your gran to be treated? Really, really important. You touched on one thing there, regulation, and actually I put that down straight after transactional. I've been to Australia. I've been to America. I've got a guest coming on shortly from Dublin. I do some work with agents there. They're all licensed. In the UK, there is no licensing. You can be a butcher one day, a dentist one day, and advising somebody on their biggest tax-free asset the next day. You know, when, and I know we've got Lord Best and Roper and all of that. You know, is that something the Homeowners Alliance are campaigning for? And when's it going to change? Because it needs to change.
Yeah, no, we fully support ROPA. We fully support regulation of estate agents. We would like to see, you know, some of the big estate agents to make sure that the estate agents, there's a career path for them. That's super important. And we always say that, you know, the estate agents are the first port of call. So this is why when you said that, you know, people haven't heard of Homeowners Alliance, they'll hear us if they find us via Google. But actually, when you're really first thinking of buying or selling, it's the estate agent. That's the first person. We want them to, you know, say, yes, get your conveyancer early, you know, let's be upfront with all the information about the property. So it's super important. But when is it going to happen? I'm maybe a bit jaded. We've been you know, working on it for a long time, and perhaps there could be, I think, through the Leasehold Reform Act and through the, you know, managing of property agents, and there's been also better regulation around social, you know, managers of social housing. So it might come in through that way. But it is something we needed, and it's something that we will continue to campaign for.
Okay, so I use your website a lot to help me when I'm doing my training. And what's very good is actually it helps people compare achieved price to asking price, because that's very important. As a seller, I want somebody who's a skilled negotiator. I want somebody who has got a great success rate, who is more likely to sell it. And I want somebody whose days on the market are less, because it is very, very stressful. And what I like is you provide all that information so people can make a more informed decision. Where does all that information actually come from? Because some of the questions when I get out, when I use the slides to say, actually, this is what's happening in your area. This is how you can compare to your competitors. The question I get asked is, that's well and good, but where are you pulling that information from?
So I think you're talking about our Find an Estate Agent tool,
yes.
Which others have. Yeah, and I think so. It's mostly pulled in from land registry. So it's literally land registry data matching to listings data from Rightmove and the other portals, and it's sort of matching that up, and that's where that's coming from, and it's over the last 180 days. So it's not perfect, but it gives a good indication, and we also have sort of information about sort of the type. You know, we also know estate agents, if they're, you know, there might be more experience in certain types of properties. So we do, you know, I just wrote a piece yesterday to say that estate agents is not just, you know, to consumers, say it's not just about the price. It's not just about, you know, it's easy just list it on the property portal and off it go. It's not. It's about the negotiation. It's making the price, you know, making it final, which is why we're also would like to see estate agents. And I think they've moved away from it, but, you know, having really long contracts, tie-in contracts, that's not good for the consumer. It's not good for the estate agent. And we know some of the best estate agents are there saying, well, actually give us your property. We'll give us 4 weeks, give us 6 weeks. We'll see if we can sell it then. So being that sort of open and honest about it. But and then we have a house price watch. We've been doing that data for 15 years, or well, sort of 12 years. So through our experience, and we also do independent research. You know, we did a sort of on the estate agent fees piece, which I think people used to ask about, that we did sort of a biggest mystery shop of estate agents at the time. So we do independent research polling, and we pull data from the, you know, for our estate agent tool.
God, there's so many things I want to discuss with you. You've brought up so many amazing things. So I'm going to go back to something. So my son's buying at the moment. He went into an agent. I'm not going to name agents. People can guess. And I actually put a post on LinkedIn recently. And I think I've had about 9,000 impressions on it, which is a bit ridiculous on it. And I said, you know, quite a few agents hadn't called him back. One agent blatantly insisted that they were not showing him any properties until they saw their financial advisors, which I think is just wrong. I get the fact it's about, you know, what's best for you. So, you know, but who have you compared it to? You know, so that's fine. I don't have a problem with being compared, but actually to stop a viewing because you haven't seen their financial advisor, you know, and you keep on mentioning 3 words about upfront, honest and open and being transparent. And for me, that's really important. So that's one of the things that's, you know, pretty scary. Tie contracts, again, my mum asked me to help a 94-year-old lady that got given a 26-week contract. Within 2 minutes, they had come down to a month's notice. So it's like literally, but why? You know, why does a 94-year-old have to go to that? Why does somebody have to call up? Why is the public being hoodwinked? So, you know, I don't know if you're a big fan. Well, forget about what I was going to say. I was going to say Family Fortunes. If you've ever watched Family Fortunes, they ask the question, who's the most trusted, who's the least trusted people? And number 2 was estate agents. But more relevant is the Maury survey that happens every year. And estate agents are, you know, 5th or 6th down from the bottom. You know, with the trust openness, and you can understand why. So for you, what does best practice look like for estate agents?
Best practice is being open communication. So it's not stopping potential buyers from viewing properties. Of course, you need to financially qualify, of course, but we do know, and we get this all the time, and we get incredibly frustrated because the enforcement isn't there. We're constantly reporting estate agents doing this sort of stuff to trading standards. And we know lots of good estate agents feel the same way, and good, you know, mortgage brokers. And that sort of, you know, cross-selling, I think, should be completely stamped out. And I think that's, you know, if we can get that sorted, I do wonder whether, you know, one of the ideas we've had is that, you know, maybe some of your viewers won't like this, but estate agents shouldn't be getting money from the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. So you shouldn't be getting a conveyancing, big conveyancing referral fee, a big mortgage fee, and the seller, because you're conflicted, because actually you're employed by the seller to get the best price for the property. You're incentivized alongside the seller. So I do think that's really, really important, is to not muddy the waters, and actually you're there and to explain to buyers you are there for the seller. But you should, you know, the big thing is that, you know, it's all the other bits of the estate agent that you need to do, is to bring the property along, making sure you're open about all the information up front. You know, if there's problems with the property, it's much better to know before they've even viewed the property than further down the line, because it's going to waste everyone's time, which is about the research we did today. But it's that, you know, the estate agent is the one should be enabling, getting the chains going, you know, being honest that there's a chain there, being honest about the buyers and the sellers, and being very managing expectations of people to try to really get the deals done, because it's such a stressful time moving home.
Okay, I totally agree. I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you about your report, because I know you're really keen to go on it. There's a couple of other things I want to talk about that you've raised. The first thing, and actually before you came on, and I've written it down and I've got it in big capital letters in front of me, is enforcement and the national trading standards. And you know, it's great, all these fantastic ideas. And, you know, going back to when I was an agent, and I haven't been an agent for 13 years, one of the things we actually did was, on one of our training sessions, we had somebody from Camden Trading Standards Office come in and talk to us what you can do and what you can't do. But the point is, I think up in Powers, if they're still there, there's most probably 2 or 3 people that are trying to enforce everything that's going on. You know, honestly, how is the industry ever going to improve if there isn't any enforcement, if the national standards, the trading standards? So, you know, you can talk to your blooming face, I can talk to my blooming face, the agents can, but again, you know, I suppose what needs to be done, how can that change?
I agree. And it's like, it's really frustrating when I can see things happen. You know, if you've got a buyer who's been pressurized to use an in-house mortgage broker, you know, they're not going to want to make a complaint. We've got redress schemes, but they're not really working on behalf of buyers. We know that the trading standards, the enforcement agencies, they're you know, they're tiny budgets, but if they can do some big, high profile, you know, enforcement action, Our report, what we looked at 150 listings across the 3 main portals, a snapshot, very easy to do. And we found non-compliance all over the place. If we can do that, why can't trading standards do that? So I think that it's been great that they've produced guidance on it, but honestly, they should probably go after, if they went after a couple of the big players that are doing something wrong, that would probably really help the industry. So we would like to see better enforcement, and particularly on this sort of the cross-selling for buyers, and actually having much more material information up front. And I think those are 2 areas that'll be really easy to do that, as well as dealing with and making it easier for people to report when people are acting illegally. And I think that would really help the estate agents who are really trying a good job. There should be a whistleblowing line, for be able to say that this is going wrong, this is not happening, this is happening on my high street, and it's not right. So, but yeah, completely agree. Enforcement is an important area.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're starting to see a lot more HMRC with the anti-money laundering requirements, naming and shaming people. Obviously you see people, if they belong to a redress scheme, they get named and shamed and get kicked off, and rightly so. But there needs to be something else, a lot more done on that. So I agree with you. All right, you just got something else in front of me now. I'll keep on pushing the reports. I'm really sorry.
Sorry.
So there's a couple of other things I wanted to, because I think fees is a really important issue. And I think estate agents, sometimes it's a race to the bottom, who can charge the cheapest fee. And for me, actually, it is an investment in certain people in estate agent services. And it's not about a cheap fee. It's about having a skilled negotiator who's going to get you more money in that seller's pocket. So, I'd be really interested to know in your mystery shop, what sort of questions that you asked and what sort of replies that you got, because I mystery shop agents, and I just say a very simple question. I'm thinking of selling my property in Acacia Road. Can you tell me how much you charge? And I will get our standard fee is, I'll tailor our fee. We won't be beaten on fees. Actually, I don't know. Hold on, I'll go and speak to my manager. 5 minutes later, can't get hold of my manager. I still don't know. And, some agents will say, actually, we charge 1%, 2%, whatever it is, and they're honest, transparent. So again, what were your learnings from that, please?
Yeah, no, that was exactly the same with us. So we asked we called estate agents up and down the country and asked them, we're thinking of selling a house and this is the property. And at the time we had a lot of people saying, we can't possibly know until we have to come and sit on your sofa. And then we also had, and we actually found the smaller independent agencies were much more sort of honest and open, and they'll say, well, we charge this amount, or between this and this, but we've got to see, and we'll look at the price comparisons. And at the time, there's just a lack of transparency, and I think things have moved on a lot. At the time, they weren't even talking about VAT, so VAT would be going on top of it. So I think that's something where we have made a difference. I think that definitely is much more included on the VAT charges, and I completely agree that having been transparent about the fee, but also to say, well, this is what you get for it. And actually, it's actually until you sell the house. I think the average at the moment now is like 1.42%, isn't it? Including that. So I think fees have come down since we've started. But it is about, and we know that the online estate agents have tried to make a big sort of, the big market share, and it hasn't really stuck, has it? So I think there's definitely a role for a good independent agent and who's aligned. And, we also sometimes advise that people that maybe you have a certain percentage up to a certain price, asking price, and then a higher percentage above it. So you're all aligned on the same thing. But it's exactly the same. But would you always say to consumers, to estate agents, be open, just be honest. Have your fees on the website. And don't go and try to make extra money through all these extra little bits and pieces. And that's where you get a bad taste in the mouth for the consumers.
Okay, almost at that question about material information of a report. One final question, okay? And you mentioned it, upfront information, really important. So I cannot understand, with all the technology we now have in place, how it is taking longer to get properties through than previously. It just doesn't make sense. And I know Kate Faulkner's doing an amazing job, and there's loads of people that are involved in the home conveyancing process to try and resolve it and come up with something. What advice are you giving sellers to be market ready and exchange ready?
So we've changed our advice over the years since we first started. So we encourage, like Kate Faulkner says, but people don't, people won't find us until it's too late. We also ask estate agents to do the same. Is for somebody who's potentially thinking of selling, is to get a conveyancer up front. So if there's any problems with titles or restrictions or covenants or whatever it is, get that sorted first, and or at least being honest about it. That's really important. So because that's where the sales start to fall through. And that's where the property listings is really important, to have as much information as you can. Don't shy away from a bad survey report. If you know there's problems with damp or whatever it is, and you've got a potential buyer, that's fine if they know about it, but they know about it later down the line, they might pull out. So I think it's really important, and we constantly will campaign for more certainty. We don't like people pulling out of the property transaction, and we're quite supportive of not only upfront information, but having a reservation agreement, or having sort of skin in the game. So buyers and sellers putting in money, so that the transaction sticks, as opposed to just going and putting an offer in 1 week and then just changing your mind again or whatever, because that's just wasting everyone's time. So, and that's where estate agents need to also, is like, you don't want to sort of encourage reluctant buyers who are not really interested in selling or buying and getting the offer, and that's just wasting everyone's time. So being really honest about the property information up front before the person gets to view the property is way better approach, really. And hopefully the material information will be doing more of that.
Fantastic. I love the fact you talked about reservation agreements there. I think that's fantastic. Is there stuff on your website about reservation agreements? Because I think, as you've rightly pointed out, coming from, don't take my word from it, take the word of a consumer association who are talking about reservation agreements. I think that's very, very powerful. So
yeah, I do think it'd be, I do think if everyone puts in, and one of the big products that actually really a lot of people like on our website is the home buyers protection insurance. Because if you think about it, if you're buying a property and there's potentially going to pull out, and you're putting money up front for conveyancing, for surveys, and these are hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So that's where some of the insurance to help people forward. But I do think a reservation agreement, but I think it would need to be mandated. I think that's the one thing. I don't think it's something that, because you need both sides of the chain or all up and down to put it. And I'm not talking huge amounts of money. We have it for, if you're buying a new build home, you put down £1,000. If for whatever reason you need to pull out and there's different sort of conditions, you get your money back. So I do think the same could be said for buyers and sellers. That just give a bit more certainty. Which I think would help increase, reduce for transaction times.
100%. So I remember going back to my Green & Co days. We had something many years ago called a goodwill charter, which was an anti-gazumping or anti-gazundering tool, where we asked both the seller and the buyer to put down the deposit of £500, £1,000. Now, if the seller pulled out because he got a higher offer, that £1,000 will go to the buyer. If the buyer pulled out, apart from bad survey search or legal title, then that will go to the seller. Now, we found instead of 6 out of 10 sales going through, 9 out of 10 sales went through. So again, having that commitment makes a massive, massive difference. And again, I think it's really important as agents. You mentioned there that home buyers protection insurance. I'll be talking about that, helping your buyers, building that trust to say, actually, you know what, 1 in 3 sales sadly do fall through in the UK. but you can take out a policy, so at least you get something back.
Yeah.
So thank you. That's a massive share. I really appreciate
No,
that.
it's a good product, and it's you know, I think it starts at, I mean, it's all the details on our website, but it starts at £69. I think average payout's about £850, and it just helps the buyer then think, okay, I'm going to go ahead and get my survey done. I'm going to go and engage my conveyancer and get the searches done, because they'll be out-of-pocket expenses. And I think it's good for both sides. So I do think it's a product that's fairly new. And people don't really know about it. So
Okay.
the more people know about it.
I'm going to share it with loads of people now, because I think that's something we need. No, you're welcome. Okay, so we got to the report. So I'm sorry it's taken half an hour to get there. So I know you've just commissioned a report that you've just released. So I'm going to let you share the findings, what it's all about, and
Sure.
so we can look from that. Thank you.
Yeah, so what we did was we looked at 150 listings, leasehold listings, all across the three main portals, Rightmove, Zoopla, and OntheMarket. Sorry for the other portals I haven't mentioned. And we were looking at how well they're complying with the material information guidance that's been produced by Trading Standards a year on. So this is like going into kind of enforcement and what's happening. We found really good compliance with price, number of rooms, type of property. We also found really good, and something really useful for consumers is like 81% of the listings included the overall square footage, going beyond the guidance. That's a really good way to help people compare one property for another, whether it's, you know, value for money for them or not. But what we're really surprised at, 1 in 4 of the listings that we looked at did not have an EPC. And that's a legal requirement since 2013. So I was really surprised that that was there. We also found that generally estate agents were not loading if they did have the information, they weren't loading them in the right way, in the right sort of fields. So we'd love to see the portal say, actually, you have to load them here in this field so people can compare and contrast and see whether they want to view the property. Only 2/3 of the properties we looked at had council tax details. So these are non-avoidable costs. These are costs you can easily find out how much a council tax will be incurred on a certain property. Estate agents can find that. I don't know why that wasn't in that information. But so we're quite disappointed in terms of service charges. Only 62% had service charge details. And we just want to see a lot more information used in the fields. This is material information. To get this information up on there. And we have, you know, it's interesting. We released it last week, and we've had some really good response from estate agents. And this is brilliant stuff. But actually, if I tell my seller that they've got to, you know, put this information, I want to have this information, and they don't want to because they want to hide away from whatever, and they'll go to another estate agent. And that's what we don't want. So we'd love to see more material information. We'd love to see better enforcement of this information and have these property listings full. And I think that would really help improve the reputation of estate agents, and also help with generally making the whole home buying and selling process slicker. So,
okay, so how do you overcome those sellers that want to hide stuff?
well, I think that hopefully that, you know, the seller says they want to hide stuff and they go to one estate agent and they say, well, no, we can't take it. This is what the information you need. And actually you should be instructing your conveyancer now to help you with certain information. They go to the next estate agent and they say the exact same thing. So I think that is the education side. We don't want the sellers to be able to shop around. Well, we want them to, of course, shop around, but to be, you know, they need to be educated, and they've got to be. And, you know, if they don't disclose certain things, it will probably come out later down the line, and then it's time wasted for absolutely everyone.
What do you think the consumers are more looking for in information wise on the property these days? So again, this may be a bit controversial, energy performance certificates. When I was an agent, and albeit I haven't been for a long time, I don't think I was ever asked for an energy performance certificate, asked what the rating is. And again, this is my ignorance, so I'm sorry. Has it changed?
Unfortunately, I worked on the EPC legislation, so
I'm sorry.
No, but I would agree. I would agree with you. I would agree with you that it's not a major factor, because, you know, it's very much constrained supply. It will be much more so, particularly if you're buying properties for rent. because of the legislation that you need to have a certain rating in order to rent out. So it should stick a bit more. And they are looking at reforming the EPC. So things like green mortgages, that sort of thing, is that the EPC should be becoming more important. But I completely agree. But what they do need to know about, and this is where, there's very little information. We had average service charges. And we found that only 20% of the high-rise buildings we looked at even mentioned building safety issues. And we know if they don't have the correct paperwork in place, people cannot get a mortgage. And we've had in our report, we've got examples of listings where they're being advertised to first-time buyers, and we know rightly that they're not going to get a mortgage. So why are we wasting their time? So they're shying away. We found listings where they even tried to sort of almost hide the fact that it was in a high-rise building. So those types of information that we need to, and there's very, very little information about general restrictions on covenants, if you can work from the property, this and that. So we'd like to see more information about that up front, or at least, on the property listing, so people can take a view before they want to view the property.
Okay, so I know it's been in the agency press, the report, because I've read it and seen it. If people don't read agency press, but they're watching and listening to this, how do they find and get a copy of the report, please? We
can find it on our website. So it's hoa.org.uk, and we've got a really good search function. You can search on that. But for anyone who's buying or selling, or any consumers, we've got so much guidance, so much information, step-by-step guide to buying, selling, tricks, how to get the best value for your home, negotiating strategies. We've got absolutely everything. Just come take a look at our website and take a look around.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being such a great guest. I'm sorry it took me so long to get to the report. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that, Paula, as well?
So my details are on my website. It's paula@hoa.org.uk. You can also LinkedIn with me, but you know where to find me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. Until the next one, have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.